Hermione Granger is the brightest witch of her age. She is the perfect third prong to Ron and Harry, forming the Golden Trio. But if you've read the books and seen the movies, you'll know that they made some big changes to her character for the big screen. Big changes that honestly don't do Hermione any favours. So let's explore the assassination of Hermione's character in the Harry Potter films. Now, for all of Hermione's brains, she also has plenty of flaws in the books. Flaws that allow her to grow and develop. Flaws that allow us to go on a journey with her to overcome them. But those flaws are either glossed over, played down, or downright ignored in the movies. As an example, Hermione is annoying in the books, particularly the earlier ones. Ron and Harry want to have fun, and she wants them to do what she would do. To read, to do their homework, to take notes, to do research. And sure, objectively, these might be better options than just messing around or playing Quidditch or slacking off. And that's kind of why we love Hermione, right? Because she's technically got their best interests at heart. But the way that she nags them, the way she berates them, the way she guilt trips them, and her holier-than-thou tone at times makes her irritating and borderline unlikable in certain moments. But that gives us a far more rewarding payoff in the later books when the three meet at a sort of middle ground. When Hermione lets them copy her answers or agrees to break the rules, and Harry and Ron show more appreciation and respect for Hermione's way of doing things too. But in the films, she doesn't have these flaws. Maybe ever so slightly in the first film, but they're glossed over so much that they're not really considered an aspect of her character. And in so many other incidents, where her character has flaws that allow her to grow later, they're just glossed over or ignored in the films. For example, in the books, Hermione doesn't say Voldemort's name until the Order of the Phoenix, and it's a huge moment for her, and also a huge moment of solidarity with Harry at a time when he's dealing with the trauma of Voldemort's return the year before, and he feels like the whole world is against him, and Dumbledore, the only person he felt like could fight that fight with him, was ignoring him. So Harry felt so alone, and then Hermione organises the DA, and she says Voldemort's name. After 5 years of her saying you-know-who, she finally musters the courage to say Voldemort's name, and she stands with Harry. But when does she say Voldemort's name in the films? Well, it's right at the start of the Chamber of Secrets, when she steals Dumbledore's line and says fear of a name only increases fear of the thing itself. And by saying it so early, it really belittles that moment for her. It doesn't feel significant, and it doesn't seem like the culmination of any sort of growth for her character. And that sort of brings us to the way that the Golden Trio works so well, and it's all because of balance. Harry is impulsive, he takes action, Ron is loyal and full of heart, and Hermione is thoughtful. She's the brains of the operation. The three sides of the scale even each other out, they complement each other, and they give each other balance. But the movies give Hermione so much of Ron's positive moments that it no longer feels like that much of a balance. It feels heavier on two sides. And that might seem like it's making Hermione into this amazing, badass super character, but it's really not. It takes away what makes her human, and the journey that her character goes on. Firstly, there's the fact that Hermione is a Muggle-born, and so her knowledge of wizarding traditions and culture should be flawed, because not everything can be learned from books. Ron, on the other hand, in the books shows this knowledge many times, with the wizard's chess in the Philosopher's Stone because he grew up playing it, and with the tales of Beedle the Bard in the Deathly Hallows because Ron grew up hearing those stories from his mother. This knowledge comes from Ron so many times in the books, but in the films, there are moments where that knowledge is taken from him. For example, the Mudblood moment in the Chamber of Secrets. In the books, Hermione doesn't fully understand the gravity of what Malfoy has called her, but Ron explains it. That nuanced knowledge of how things work in the wizarding world is so integral to what Ron brings to the trio, but the films had Hermione take that from him. Just like they had her take on so many of his most glorious moments. Ron's moment where he fully embodies a Gryffindor in The Prisoner of Azkaban. Ron had just been dragged off by a giant dog. He has a broken leg, and yet, when his best friend is being threatened, Ron stands on that broken leg and confronts Sirius Black, who, by the way, Ron thinks is a mass murderer. Ron stands up and he says, "If you want to kill Harry, you'll have to kill me too." And it is such an incredible, spine-tingling moment of loyalty and love. And in the films, they gave that moment to Hermione. And it's just not who Hermione is, because as loyal and lovely as she can be, it was an impulsive move. It was a little bit thoughtless. And if Sirius really was the psychopathic murderer they thought he was, then Ron would probably be killed there. Hermione's actions would be far more reserved and observant and thoughtful. But in the films, they give this moment to her, and for what? There's another big moment that they take from Ron too, and it is to the detriment of Hermione's growth. In the Philosopher's Stone, when the trio are trying to save the stone, there's a number of tasks they need to get through. Ron's moment to shine is the chess match. Harry's is flying on the broom to catch the key. And in the books, Hermione's is Snape's riddle. But in the movie, they drop the riddle, and so the Devil's Snare becomes Hermione's moment. The problem is, they eliminate such a key part of her character development just by giving her that scene. Because in the book, the Devil's Snare is constricting Harry and Ron, and Hermione gets flustered. She can't remember what she'd learned, and when she remembers it, and remembers she needs fire, she panics because she can't find wood. She forgets she can do magic to conjure it, and it's Ron who reminds her that she's a witch. But in the films, Ron is being crushed by the Devil's Snare, and Hermione manages to solve the issue without much help. But a key part of Hermione's character is that while she's book smart, she chokes in high pressure, real situations, particularly ones that she can't prepare for. Because Hermione's strength is in assessing her own weaknesses and planning to mitigate them. But when Hermione can't plan for something, she's not able to think or act as quickly as the others. For example, in the Deathly Hallows, when Ron is splinched, Hermione fumbles and panics because Ron is losing blood, and she can't get her hands to do what she wants them to. As brilliant as her knowledge is, it doesn't always translate into action at the key moments. Which is another example of how the trio balances each other out, but the films take this flaw from her. They make her book smart and extremely capable when she has to improvise, which removes any room for growth or development. So Hermione in the movies is this overly polished superhuman. So many of her flaws are taken away, and she becomes this combination of her best bits and also Ron's best bits. And it takes away so much emotional poignancy, not just from the moments that should be really important to her growth, like when she says Voldemort's name for the first time, or like Neville when she comes to life in the DA in terms of applying her knowledge in a practical way, but also when Ron leaves Harry and Hermione in the Deathly Hallows. Sure, it's sad because they lost a member of the trio, but there's such an imbalance with the trio in the films that, besides losing an extra wand, do we really feel like Harry and Hermione are any less capable without Ron? Hermione has taken so much of what Ron has to offer, so you just don't feel the same sense of doom, or that their odds of success have crashed after Ron leaves in the movies. Hermione in the films isn't the Hermione from the books, an actual person with flaws and growth. And she's so much worse of a character for it. And speaking of Hermione being a worse character, what if she was completely stupid? What if we had a Harry Potter series where Hermione was an absolute idiot who couldn't do anything? Well, I made a video breaking down how that would change the Harry Potter series, and it all ends up being very different, so you'll want to watch that one next.